as the case may be, to get us to the 27th of July, where we will be starting with writing the chapters, right? But you can start writing your chapters so long, right? I mean, it's up to you. But the structure of the webinars is that we start with your with your
Yes, right.
So the structure of the webinar is that we start with the literature search, we're developing the literature basis, a base literature base from which we will draw our literature that we use for our literature review. Those who attended the previous two, you'd understand that we also focused on developing the research topic, the problem statement, and your research questions. So my assumption is that those who've been following by now, you do have your topic, you do have your research questions and objectives. And I want to assume that you have your research questions, right? So from the research questions and the topics that we developed in our previous demonstration, those who were not there, you might be want to go and watch those ones, right? So that you can be at speed with what we are doing on a weekly basis. So what we have now, we have the research questions and the research topics and the research objectives, problem statement, and the gaps in literature, right? We have those sections that we've developed in our previous presentation. So today's webinar, what we want to do, we want to search literature, right? We want to demonstrate how to search literature that is targeted, right? And not just literature, but relevant literature that we will use in our next presentation to write your literature review, right? So this literature is very important because we will use this literature from the beginning of the literature review until the end of the thesis itself in the discussion section. So we want to create this database that we always refer to, right? So for us to achieve and attain this goal, right, we will focus on two platforms, right? We want to bring together ChatGPT and Google Scholar, right? I know most people are familiar with right, these ZET. Can you please mute your mic? I can hear myself in your background. Thank you so much. Right. So for us to get to that point of having a database, so we basically want to create a library of literature that we will use to develop our literature review next in our next session. Then we'll use that same literature review to develop the theoretical framework in our next session after this one. Then that literature would also inform the methodology that we will use, also informing the presentation analysis and the discussion of your findings, right? So the literature base that we're going to develop today, right, that we're going to search today, it's very important, right? So it's going to be the basis upon which you work and develop your dissertation or your thesis. So I want you to sit back, relax, and enjoy, right? We're going to have two sections. The first section will be comprised of the conceptual understanding of what Google Scholar, what ChatGPT can do, and what are the Boolean operators and the keywords and everything. We'll develop those conceptually. But in the second section, will actually involve the practical demonstration. Will demonstrate to you how to actually develop these, right, on ChatGPT. Then you take them and you import them on Google Scholar. Then you have the results. Then after the results, you develop the library. So I'm assuming that everyone has used Google Scholar here and there. Everyone has used ChatGPT here and there. But there are different ways of doing things for targeted results. And that's what we're going to be focusing on in this particular presentation, right? So my name is Dr. Tigera P. Muringa. I prefer calling myself TP Muringa, right? I'm a founding member of Afri Leaders AI. an organization that is spearheading the implementation of AI and its various assets within the African context, right, in various sectors of the society, right? Specifically focusing on implementation of AI in higher education spaces, right? That's my area of focus in journalism, of course, right? My background involves participating in the University of KZN AI policy, also bringing in some ideas there and reviewing. Former member of the UKZN AI task force, advisor to deans and academic leaders on AI ethics and thesis examination. Very, very critical role that I'm playing currently. I get calls, I get consultations with deans wanting to know what decision to make when a student or a thesis or the examiners have identified that there's high use of AI. We come in and we advise on what needs to be done and what penalties, if there are any, and what remedies should be taken in that case. So if you need any consultation as regards to your thesis or dissertation that is under fire from the use of AI, you can reach out to us and we can advise you on various ways to get yourself out of that predicament, or to resolve those situations. So to date, we have trained over 1,000 academics and researchers on the use of ethical use of generative AI. I've done trainings.
I have a patient.
All right.
That's why
Nico Condry. Can you please mute? Right. So I've done UKZN. I've been training University of KwaZulu-Natal, the College of Humanities. You can access that training. We trained over 200 academics. You can access that training on our YouTube and on our website, AfriLeaders AI. Right. I've trained. We've trained DUT, right? College of the Faculty of Engineering. We've done some trainings there and presentations there. And yes, we've been doing overly weekly trainings, right? So our current work that we're doing beyond training, right? We have managed to develop an AI platform that streamlines the qualitative research process. So imagine, as a qualitative researchers, you don't need to go and do interviews with the participants anymore, right? You just upload your interview guide, and the platform, the AI, turns that interview guide into a voice that will conduct the interviews on your behalf with the participant, right? When the participant is done, they click complete, you receive the transcript, you receive the audio, the platform transcribe, generate codes and themes, and generate the final result, right? You can always do whatever you want to do with it, but that's what the platform does. So the qualitative research has been made easy, right? So what is this workshop about, right? What is this workshop about? By the end of this session, you need to be able to design transparent and systematic literature search strategies, right? What do I mean? You need to be able to know how to get the right literature from Google Scholar, right? You need to translate to be able to convert your research questions into searchable concepts. So that whole research question that you have, or your topic or the objectives, there are concepts that are embedded within them. That's what we need to extract. And when we extract them, we use them for searching, right? So it's very important, right? We need to use AI. By the end of this session, you need to be able to use AI tools strategically and ethically to support literature searching, right? You cannot continue to search literature using the traditional ways that we used to use, right? There's advancement within the higher education space, in terms of technological developments. So it's very imperative for you to appropriate all those tools that are there, right? So in this particular presentation, our demonstration is limited to Google Scholar, right? Of course, you can use your Scopus. Of course, you can use your Consensus. You can use any other database, your ProQuest. But in this particular one, we're using Google Scholar, which is the free version. I love using free version because they allow everybody who are not in a position to subscribe to actually use and produce the best outcomes, right? So you should be able to construct Boolean search strings for different review types, right? Boolean search strings are very important, right? They're very important, and I know most people don't use them on Google Scholar. People go on Google Scholar, then they just keep search, they write their title or write the areas that they're interested in, or their subject area. That's simply what they do, but they don't use Boolean search strings. So we will demonstrate how to create the Boolean search strings, how to use them, how to refine them, and how to get the best outcome from those search strings, right? But before we get into the heart of our presentation, I think it's very important for us to get the ethical question out of the way, right? Most people ask our questions. Is it how ethical it is to write a literature review using AI? You know, how ethical it is to copy and paste? Is it not plagiarized work? You know, all those questions. You know, most of these questions we've answered them already, right? But I think it's imperative for those who are joining for the first time for us to bring them to speed, right? So we in this in academia, right, in drawing on university policies across South Africa and beyond, right, we regard AI tools as assistants, right? Last week in our presentation, I said AI is a research instrument, right? So they are enhancing our capabilities as researchers, not replacing human judgment. It's very important for us to make that distinction. We're not being replaced, or we are not replacing our agency using AI tools. Instead, we are augmenting what we can do using these super fast machines, right, to streamline the processes of collecting literature, to streamline the process of synthesizing literature. What we're simply doing is that we are enhancing our capabilities using these tools. So we're not replacing our human judgment. Human judgment remains central. It remains key, and it remains fundamental in the process of academic writing, because without human judgment, the rigor, the integrity, and authenticity of the outcomes of the generative AI will remains in question, right? So we also emphasized the issue of transparency. We said transparency is key, right? You need to document AI use in search and writing, right? We said in our first session, we spoke about the issue of declaring what you've used AI to do, right? Transparency. It would be unfair, right, for you to produce a very good thesis, right, using AI and not declare that you used AI and present it as though it was developed from traditional ways of writing, right? That's unfair advantage within the academic space, and dishonesty at the same time, right? So it's very important for you to be transparent, to mention each and every section where you used AI, to say the tables developed by AI, the data was not fabricated in any way, the data analysis section was not uploaded on AI tools. I only use AI tools in refinement of ideas that I've already created, right? So I'm not creating my ideas using AI. Actually, I have these ideas and I'm fine-tuning them using the AI tools, right? We also spoke about the dichotomy of AI assisted and AI generated, right? That's in our first session. We're not going to go back deep into that, right? So we need to avoid plagiarism, right? Always cite sources, right? Even when suggested by AI. But it's very important for us to know that, you know, for you to have credible sources, you need the steps that you need to do. And that was covered in our previous last week's session when we talk about prompts and hallucination and fabrications. So we're saying AI cannot think critically or assess disciplinary relevance. You are in charge as a researcher. You are in charge. I always advise academics and deans and advices that I give, that AI tools or generative AI tools do not have objectives of their own, right? Left on their own device, they cannot pursue goals or agendas or objectives. They don't have the capacity to do that. Rather, they work on the objectives that we as individuals or human we have given them. And when those objectives are prompted effectively, we have output, but human judgment still remains central and key in verifying everything that would have come. So in the process of us demonstrating the search for literature, the key thing that I want you to understand is that we're using AI as an assistant. It's a research instrument, not as a tool to replace human judgment. So using AI responsibly enhances research efficiency and rigor without compromising ethics or academic integrity. So it's very important for us to set this tone, right? We are not here to do copy and paste. We are not here to fabricate information. We want to get the best out of it, but also maintaining and retaining the integrity of using AI. So the key ethical issue or the key principle as it's pertaining to the use of AI is that transparency, is that of verification, and is that of disclosure, right? Three things. You need to verify, you need to be transparent, and you need to disclose. Right, those are three key pillars that you always need to be in mind and to make sure that you do not make a mistake. So that I thought we should clarify the issue of the ethical question as it pertains to AI. If you're afraid of using AI, my worry is that your job will be replaced because it will be replaced by somebody who knows how to use AI. So bring yourself to speed, pace yourself up, learn new platforms, learn new technologies that will put in your tools box. Whenever you want to do a task, you always do things that are automated and reduce the amount of time you spend on a specific task. Right. So that was the ethical question. Now let's move to part one of our presentation of what we're doing. Here's the conceptual presentation. What do we mean and what do we want to achieve? What next? What are we trying to achieve in this presentation? What do we want to do, right? So we're simply saying that we need to have literature search that have rigor, right? When we are searching literature, we're trying to move away from ChatGPT generating literature for us and only to realize that that literature is fabricated and does not reflect what is actually true, right? So we want to move away from all those things. So, but why does searching for literature matter in this particular, when you're writing your thesis, your PhD, your master's, your honors, right? So literature search is underpin systematic reviews, right? We're talking about scoping reviews. We're talking about narrative reviews, and these three are different, right? And normally in our PhD, masters, we normally focus on the narrative reviews. And when you are writing journal articles, that's where you will go to focus on your systematic reviews, your scoping reviews, etc., etc. But one thing that we need to be in mind is that poor search design leads to incomplete evidence, right? If you miss the process of searching for the right literature, right, your literature review will be lopsided. Right, I've generated literature reviews before. I've done some search of literature before. When I started using Consensus AI, those who know Consensus AI, a platform to search for literature, it's used to give me literature that is only from India, right? Similar to Google also, it has tendencies to give you literature that is more Western, right? When you use keywords or search strings that are not fine-tuned, and we want to fine-tune them in this presentation, right? So we are saying that the stronger your search string, your keywords, your Boolean operators, the better the literature search or outcome that you get at the end of the day. And it will trickle down to the nature of the literature review that you produce, right, when you are synthesizing that literature, you'd find that a student is reviewing literature for a study in South Africa, but most of the literature that is being reviewed there is literature that is based in the USA. Right, it's literature based in India, it's literature based in China. Now, as an examiner, you ask yourself, is this study an American study or an Indian study or South African study? So the reason why is the problem began with the kind of search that was done on Google Scholar or whatever platform or whatever database, right? The kind of keywords, the relationship between Boolean operators that will demonstrate, it affects the outcome from Google Scholar, and we'll demonstrate that in our second section. So we're saying that there will be biases if you do not have straight and strong keywords, right? You have a weak methodology section if you do not search your literature thoroughly, because what will happen is that when you replicate methodologies used in previous studies, you are replicating methodologies that are not contextually strong enough to support the context within which you're conducting your study. So everything, if at the literature review level, at the literature review search level, if you miss it, you struggle with developing the whole thesis. Even the discussion of your thesis, the discussion section itself will be weak, because you'll be comparing your findings with findings that are not relevant to your context, are not relevant to your study as a whole. Right, so that's very important for us to get the keywords and the search strings and the Boolean operators right. So these days, if you are in journal publications, journals are increasingly scrutinizing search transparency. You'll be evaluated in terms of how you have got to, in the case of a schematic review, in case of a scoping review, how you get to gather the literature that you've gathered. Right, it's very important, and the transparency therein, it needs to be documented in a protocol. So searching, in as much as we take it for granted, I'm submitting that the strength of a good thesis, the strength of a good dissertation begins with a kind of literature that is involved, or that is searched, that is included in the literature review, in the theoretical framework, in the methodology, and in your discussion section. So if you get it wrong from the onset, you will really struggle in ensuring that you have the actual thesis that reflects academic rigor and integrity. Right. So there are different types of literature reviews. We're not going to get into depth with that, right? We have one training that we did last year on the different types of literature reviews. We have systematic reviews. These are exhaustive, replicable, and protocol driven, right? We have scoping reviews where we're mapping the breadth of literature, and we have narrative reviews where we are selective and theory driven. And narrative reviews are the common most used theories, literature reviews in your dissertation and your thesis, right? But the key point is, all these literature reviews, they require explicit search logic. And I'm sure that by the time we finish the practical demonstration, you'd realize that the way we've been searching our literature, right, is and as much as we've been happy, you'd find that there's better ways of getting the best kind of literature review that is context specific to your study, right? That is different from what we've been doing before, right? So let's move on from research questions to search strategy. I say that in the beginning that where we are now, if you've been following us from the first time, right, in our previous, we developed the questions, the objectives using AI, ChatGPT. We developed the problem statement and the title and the topic. We have all those, right? That's my assumption. So what we want to do is to the same research questions that we developed in our previous presentation or workshop, we want to use that to search for literature, right? And the reason why we using the research questions to search for literature is so that we don't drift or get lost out in the whole pool of literature that is out there. We want to focus our literature to align with the objectives and the question of our study. So I always say that in your literature review, when I'm reading your literature review as an examiner, as a supervisor, I need to see the headings in your literature review reflecting the research questions, right? So if your research question is asking about what is the role of AI in education, right? That is your first research question. So your first key heading in that particular literature review should review literature that is related to the research question. Of course, some other sub-themes can emerge as you review literature, but the overarching heading in that particular section should be the first question that you have in your research as a research question. That should be directly converted into a key heading in your literature review. Then we'll also have some key some subheadings and subheading of subheading and stuff like that, right? So what we want to do in our demonstration, we'll do it. We want to move from the research question to convert it to a search strategy. So what we do, why this is important is because we now introducing concepts of conceptual decomposition, right? So we're converting the research question, then that research question become a search string, right? And the outcome that comes from that search string, that becomes the literature that we will review under the heading of that same research question. I hope I'm making this clear. I'll hear questions when we open up for questions, right? This might be complicated for an honors or master student, but at a PhD level, we expect you to have mastered this concept, right? So we're saying now, how do we go about it? So we're saying you need to break down your research question or your research questions into concepts, right? So assuming your research question is saying, what is the role of artificial intelligence in higher education? Right. So there are concepts that are there already. The first concept is artificial intelligence. Then the second concept is what? Higher education, right? Training. Three concepts that we have. Then you need to move beyond those concepts that you've identified and you bring in synonyms. Right. You need to bring in synonyms, develop synonyms from those concepts. So when we identify that we have the first concept in our research question is artificial intelligence and the second one is higher education, you need to look for synonyms of these two concepts. So in this particular case, the synonym of artificial intelligence that we need to document would be your machine learning, right? Would be AI, would be deep learning. All those concepts, they are needed in terms of searching for literature, right? When we are developing the Boolean operators, right? It will be simple when we're doing it in the demonstration in the second section of a presentation. So when you do that, when you have identified those synonyms, now you need to use related terms. Right, you need to use related terms. The reason why we need to use related terms when we are searching or when we are developing Boolean operators is because the academics field, the academic sphere or academics in your field, they don't use similar concepts. Right, concepts are being developed on a daily basis. Right, so if you rely on one keyword or one or two keywords or two concepts, right, you miss out on a lot of literature. You'd find that the term artificial intelligence and AI were used in 2020, 2022, 2023, or before, right? But already in the field, that's where you are in, right? Because of the literature that is being generated on a daily day, scholars are developing new terms, right? But these new terms, they actually speak to the previous terms. So if you want new literature, you need to be familiar with related terms and keywords in your field, right? So this is where your AI will come into place, but we are not there yet. Right. So and our example is, how does AI influence journalism education in South Africa? We identify that the concepts there is AI. The second concept is journalism. The third one is education. And we haven't got to context. Context will be South Africa. So all these become keywords, right? Then we need to look for similar terms, right? South Africa will be global South. Education will become training. Journalism will become media reporting, etc., etc. Right. So those, you need to be familiar with what is happening. Right. So translating questions into search concepts. For example, I've already mentioned this one here. So I'm saying concept one become artificial intelligence, concept two, journalism education, concept three, South Africa, right? Each concept then becomes a keyword cluster, right? A role of AI in literature searching, right? So now here we are slowly introducing AI into our literature search. Why? Because our traditional ways of writing literature or of searching literature using Google Scholar and other platforms was more or less, manual search. And it was limited in that space because we couldn't explore all the new terms, the keywords, right, that go beyond our reading. Right. So there were limitations there. But now, the moment we introduce AI, because it is trained on a lot of data and aware of other new terminologies that we do not have, you'd realize that your search stream, your Boolean operators or your keywords will include some of the terms that you even have not ever heard of. Right. And that gives you an advantage in your search, because when you are searching those things, your outcome will reflect terminology that is used in Brazil that you didn't even know. And literature in Brazil might be richer than literature in the United States of America, but because of the biases of your algorithms and stuff like that, your literature has always been limited to a one context. So we need now to position AI as a tool. I need to emphasize this, that we are positioning AI in this particular section, in this particular workshop, is not as a decision maker. Right, it's not a decision maker, it's a supporting tool, it's a research instrument, it's supporting me to develop on what I've already worked on. Right, I know my topic, I know my research questions, I know keywords, basic keywords in my field. Right, but what I need to do, I need to go beyond my human limitations to get to find other search streams that I might not have been aware of. Right, this is where we say AI helps us to see our blind spots, right? The things that otherwise would have missed in the process of developing keywords. That's why we're introducing AI in searching for literature, right? So we're saying it is going to be useful in our presentation for the purposes of keyword expansion, right? Synonym generations. We need more synonyms, right? You can't tell me that 6 synonyms or 4 synonyms are enough to explore the breadth and depth of artificial intelligence in higher education or in journalism, right? You need more, right? And this is where AI becomes in handy, right? We need search logic refinement. I will tell you that the arrangement of words, the arrangement of keywords in your search strategy, right, affects the outcome that comes out, right? The use of quotation marks, the use of commas in a search strategy, the use of parentheses, all they affect the outcome, and you need to be aware. And this is what we call our blind spots, right? And AI will assist us to cover these blind spots. So let's introduce ChatGPT as a search design assistant, right? Not replacing us. You know, most people I know that when they go to ChatGPT, they say to ChatGPT, give me search engine, give me from this topic, generate for me keywords, right? Without probing anything, without follow-up prompting, just give me the keywords, and they don't even read those keywords. They just take them and run with them, right? And we're saying human judgment is important and human judgment is key, right? So we are emphasizing the use of AI responsibly, right? Before we get into your presentation, we're saying AI assist thinking, not replacing judgment. outputs, whatever output that comes out there must be reviewed, it must be refined, it must be contextualized, and AI does not replace database searching, right? Don't replace Google Scholar with ChatGPT. Don't replace the screening process with ChatGPT. Don't replace the critical evaluation of the outputs of Google Scholar with ChatGPT. It's a risk. It's a risk. You need to always make sure that you use human judgment in verifying the outputs, right? Keywords and synonyms, right? So single keywords limit search results. We've already established this, right? Database do not understand meaning, and this is very important. Those of us who are familiar with Google Scholar, Scopus, ProQuest, and other platforms, right? These platforms, they do not have human intelligence, right? They use predictions, probabilities, right? So they don't understand meaning, right? They pick up keywords, they pick up similar words, right? So they don't understand meaning, they don't understand what you mean if you don't put it out there, right? If you don't put that word out there, they won't pick it up, right? For example, Google Scholar will not give you a definition of AI. What it will do is that it will pick up any paper that is artificial intelligence in its title or in its body. That's what it does. It doesn't have it won't bring you studies that doesn't include that terminology in it. But regardless, that terminology has been defined, or the meaning of that technology is found in that literature. So that's the limitation of these keywords. So it behooves upon the researcher to say you need to use the synonyms, variants, discipline-specific terms, account for spelling differences. You need to use different spellings, different terminology. For example, artificial intelligence or AI, I'll describe to you the reason why we have the quotations or AI in machine learning, right? But the key point here is if an article does not use your chosen word, it will not appear in your search, no matter how relevant it is. No matter how that article, no matter how good it is, if you don't use that keyword, right, that article won't appear. So databases don't think conceptually, they match text. That's why relying on one keyword almost guarantees you that you will miss important literature. And that is a common thing amongst most researchers, right? Limited use of keywords. Right. Now, the question is, what is Boolean logic? What are Boolean operators? So most at master's level, at honors level, we normally don't we are not taught about the Boolean operators. We don't know much about these things. But the moment you progress to PhD, to being a fully fledged academic, you now know and you come to understand what Boolean operators are, right? But we are bringing these Boolean operators to you so that you know how important they are, right? And no matter at what stage you are. So Boolean key logic is a system of logic operators, used by databases to determine how search terms are combined, right? It tells the database how to interpret relationships between keywords rather than treating them in isolated words. So we're saying that you have different words, right? All of them are important to your study, right? But so we need to create a relationship between these words, right? So that our literature outcome captures all these words in our literature output, the output that comes in our literature. So the basic definition of a Boolean logic is that it defines whether search results must contain all, any, or none of the specific terms. So in other words, it's an inclusion and exclusion strategy, right? Where we say include all and none, right? So we're saying Boolean logic is the language database used to understand our search intelligence. Without it, searching becomes random rather than systematic. So we want to do systematic search, right? So here we say Boolean logic, structured database searching, right? They control how keywords interact. They improve precision, transparency, and replicability, right? If you're writing scoping reviews and systematic reviews, I should be able to use the same Boolean operators that you use, right? And get the same outcome on Google Scholar, and get the same outcome on your Scopus or ProQuest. I remember one of the reviewers that was reviewing an article that I wrote, right? He said to me that I used the Boolean operators that you used, right? And you reported that 3,900 searches came out from those Boolean operators. But when I punched them on Scopus, it didn't, the same number didn't come out, right? They must be wrong. There must be something wrong in your interpretation, or you need to run these Boolean operators again, because I can't replicate, I can't get the same results. You need to, there's an error somewhere, or it's your reporting error. You need to rerun these Boolean operators and provide justification why you have different outcomes. So Boolean operators are very important, especially in journal writing, in journal articles, particularly in scoping reviews, right? Because scoping reviews are specific and focused and targeted, right? We need those Boolean operators. So the key operators that we need to focus on, then that we focus in our presentation, the first one is AND, right? AND, like the common word we use, AND. It's a game changer in searching literature, right? Because it looks at it brings the narrow search. It narrows the search, right? Then there's the word, or, right? There's the word or.
Sorry,
yes, the slides are not moving.
Not showing.
Oh, okay. It stopped. It stopped. All right. Hope they are there now.
Yes.
Are we back? Yes. Thank you. Thank you very much. So we're saying here, the Boolean operators, right? So we're saying the word "and," you need to know that you should have the word "and," right? When you're searching for literature, you have the word "or," right? Where it broadens the search. Then "not," it excludes unwanted terms, right? Then we have "and," right? And arrow and narrow the search. So we say the operator "and" instructs the database to retrieve only sources that contains or specific terms, meaning "and" connects different concepts. It connects different concepts, right? It reduces the number of results. It increases relevance and precisions. So for example, your search string of your Boolean operators would be artificial intelligence and journalism. So these are the synonyms, right? These are the keywords, right? But we want to create a connection to say studies that come out, they should include artificial intelligence and education, right? This retrieves sources that discuss both AI and journalism education, and is how we make sure that our results actually speak to our research questions rather than just mentioning one part of that, right? Then "or," the word "or," it broadens the search, right? The operators "or" tells the database to retrieve sources that contains any one of the listed terms, right? Or group synonyms and related terms. So we simply say artificial intelligence or AI or machine learning, right? All these are synonyms of artificial intelligence. And so you need to include that in your search string. They should be there in your search string, as I will demonstrate. So we are saying "or" recognizes that scholars use different language to describe the same phenomenon, right? So we're saying these are our blind spots. So "or," the phrase "or," it allows us to cover all the blind spots, all the literature that is out there that doesn't contain the word artificial intelligence, but there's AI synonyms, there's machine learning, there's deep learning, there's generative AI. So then "or" is not about making the search messy, right? It's about making it inclusive. We are including everything that is related to what we are looking at. Then the "not," right? It excludes terms, right? The operator not excludes sources that contains a specific term, right? So we're saying not removes irrelevant or misleading results. It must be used cautiously. If you misuse the word not, right, you might exclude important information. Overuse can intentionally exclude relevant literature. So for example, we say artificial intelligence, not medical imaging, right? Artificial intelligence, not A, B, C, D, not D, not E. This excludes studies focused on medical imaging while retaining other AI-related work. So not is usually is useful when a term has multiple meanings across different disciplines. Not is powerful but risky. Every exclusion must be theoretically justified. Right. So how in practice, how Boolean operators work together. So this is how the Boolean operators should work, the final output of a Boolean operator before we get to ChatGPT and Google Scholar. It looks more or less like this. So we're saying we're drawing on our research questions or our topic. We're saying artificial intelligence or AI or machine learning and journalism education or media training, not medical education, right? That's our Boolean operator. If we punch this in Google Scholar, we have tremendous results, right? We have tremendous results, right? So database and search platforms, we're going to use in Google Scholar, and we use Google Scholar, number one is because it's free, but Google Scholar also, it has broad coverage across disciplines. It includes gray literature, thesis, reports, preprints. It has its limitations, but Google Scholar is not a traditional database. It's a search engine for academic content, right? Google Scholar is very beautiful. It has its strengths, right? It includes gray literature, etc. It has also limitations. It lacks advanced search filters, for example, unlike Scopus and Web of Science, right? It doesn't have subject category, it doesn't have methodological filters or precise publication types, right? Because it just brings you everything, Bamba Zonke, right? So let's move on, colleagues, to the practical demonstration. I'm sure that which the sections that most of us have been waiting for, because it's easier said than done, right? But we're going to say it's easier done than said. With AI, we need to actually do the deed, right? So this is what we're going to do. We're actually going to do the deed, right? So I hope you've been following from the onset, because if you miss what we said in the conceptual aspect here, you're gonna struggle to keep up with what we're gonna do on ChatGPT and Google Scholar, right? So let's move on. But while I switch screens, right, I just want to take a few questions, right, to hear what colleagues think about if there are any comments, if there's anything that you want to add some 6 cents before we proceed to the practical demonstration. I would appreciate that as I prepare my screen for the practical demonstration. Right, there's a hand from Simi. Simi Siabonga, thank you. Let's hear what you have to say.
Good morning, Dr. Moringa, and good morning to fellow students. Doctor, I just want to check here, the Boolean operator, how is it different from traditional prompting that you taught us last week and a week before? Thank you.
Right, how's Boolean? Okay. But how's Boolean operators different from the traditional prompting that we did last week? So what we did last week was basically a demonstration of avoiding biases, all right, by means of bringing in your own literature from it, all right. But the Boolean operators that we're looking at today is that we're creating terms, keywords, right, that will allow us to have a pool of literature, that would allow you to have rich and relevant literature that you develop your literature review. So in terms as it relates to prompting, you'd see that developing the Boolean operators, right, in as much as it is involves prompting, right, we are not much dependent or focused on the prompting itself, right? We are much focused on the outcome or the keywords and the Boolean, right, and how they are structured so that we can import them to a different database, not focusing on ChatGPT itself. But of course, we need prompt. And most of the sections, I think out of the 12 steps that we're going to demonstrate, it's only 5 steps that require us to have prompts, right? I think we're going to need a few prompts, right? But what we need to demonstrate here is to the relationship between ChatGPT and Google Scholar so that we produce a good database of literature. I think that's where the difference lies, right? The prompting we did last time was to avoid hallucinations, right? Biases and fabrications after we already have the literature imported, right? Here, we are assuming that we don't have the literature, right? We actually want to go and search the literature. That's where the difference in presentation is. But thank you for that question. We'll expand further on that question after when we are done. Right. I'm taking one last question, then we begin. One last question. Right. Is there a hand? Is there a comment? Right. Assuming that there is none, we need to go. We're gonna be.
My hand has been up, Doctor.
Oh, I'm not seeing. Thank you.
Up.
You go for it. Go for it. I'm not seeing the hands here on my screen. Sorry, because I'm busy trying to share. Right. Go for it.
I just want to check in your introductory comments. You indicated that let's say you are using qualitative research. This can substitute your human touch in terms of your interviews. Then you can use AI to generate questions and send it over and come and bring it summary of the respondents. But I want to check as to how far can we as researchers use AI, up to which level, like up to which percentage of my work am I, or is it ethically to use AI? And also the citations that you indicated, do we need to cite AI on a different, let's say it's ChatGPT or it's Google AI or it's Nova or any other AI app? Do we need to cite it as it is or just cite it as an artificial intelligence? Thank you.
So yes, thank you. Very important question, sir. In our last presentation, we established, right? I think you might need to go and familiarize yourself with that, but I'll answer the question regardless. So number one, there isn't no percentage of AI usage anyway, right? You just need to be responsible, right? And when you're talking about responsibility, is subjective, right? You cannot, there is no no university, no journal publication, no university has a policy that says 15%, 20%, right? In actual fact, we've discarded all those percentages, right? Because they are not accurate, right? So there's no issue of how much percentage. You can use it 100% AI. 100% AI, use 100% AI. But the key principles, the key pillars of using AI, like I've said, is number one, human judgment. Make sure that the output is verified and human judgment prevails, right? Number two, make sure that you are transparent, right? Then number three, make sure after you are transparent, make sure that you disclose the usage of AI, right? So, but there is a question of over-reliance, right? And there's a question of AI assisted and AI generated, and we've already established that in our presentations. The first one to say it's a very difficult terrain to navigate. To say the work that I can type with my hand, because I've been reading work that is AI generated, I've started to write like an AI. Right, I started my sentence construction. It's similar to that on AI. If I put it on 1018, it's picked 100% AI. Whereas I'm the one who developed the work without any use of any AI tool, right? So that terrain is contested. So that's where human judgment comes into place to say, to what extent do I want to rely on this? Do I want to copy and paste everything that is generated here? Or do I want to bring in the human touch? Right. So that's where the question is. That's where the question is. But the question of reliance and over-reliance is contested. I think that's what I can say for now. But let's take up this conversation at the end so that we don't lose, we do the practicals first, so that we can balance that one, right? So I'm going to now to share with you my screen. Hope it's showing, right? Hope it's showing right here. We are here on Google Scholar, and just to let you know that Google Scholar now is an AI-powered scholar search as well. So they are also improving and advancing. And hope the screen is visible enough, right? So this is our ChatGPT. It has different things and affordances that it offers, right? I'm using ChatGPT 2.5.2, right? And I always make mention of the version that I'm using so that people, when they go and try, they say, oh, I didn't get the same results. Why, right? You should know the version that I'm using. So we are simply saying that we have generated our topic, right? But first things first, if you go back to the prompting that we did last week, we need to have a context, and our context is that we need to generate Boolean operators. Right, we need to generate Boolean operators, right? Right, so you might choose what kind of context do you want to provide, but basic prompting requires you to have context, and it requires you to allocate roles, right, from your AI, right? What role is the AI playing in this particular case? And I've allocated it a role as an assistant in the process, which is what I want it to be. I don't want it to replace me. I just want it to work as an assistant. So we're saying, the first thing that we need to do, we need to anchor our search or our process, this process, on research question, right? So we copy and paste our research question, right? I'm going to copy and paste. This is the research question that we're working on. The research question is, how has artificial intelligence influenced journalism education in South Africa, and where are the emerging challenges and opportunities for the curriculum design, right? We have key concepts here, right? Remember, we said you need to start with key concepts. We have artificial intelligence, we have journalism education, we have South Africa, we have curriculum design, right? So these are key concepts that we need to look out for, right? So when we're verifying the output from ChatGPT, we always need to make sure that these key concepts, right, are not negated, right? Because ChatGPT can begin to do its own things if we do not direct it toward what we want to produce at the end. So we basically beginning with a research question, and I want you to note that this is not a search string, right? We're starting with a research question. Is I always emphasize that if you're writing an honors or master's or PhD thesis, right, anything that you think about you want to include when you're doing your study, think through the lenses of your questions, right, so that you don't drift. Think through the lenses of your question, and that's the approach we are using here when you're using ChatGPT. We don't want it to hallucinate. Think through your key questions. So we're saying a strong literature search starts with the conceptual clarity, right? This defines the intellectual boundaries of your study. So key questions, the question defines the intellectual boundaries of our study. So then after, okay, this is our question that we have, right? So we now want to break this question into discrete concepts or structured search strings, right? That's what we need to do. So we want this question here to break it and to deconstruct it into discrete concepts or for structured search strings, right? So we simply say, most research questions contain multiple ideas, like we've already seen on this one, the phenomenon, the context, sometimes the population. So we need to separate these ideas before constructing search streams, right? That's very important. And that's the next step that we're going to do, right? So after we've done that, we have already identified that these are the key concepts that are in there. We know them, but we want ChatGPT to enhance and assist us to get more of these keywords and stuff like that. So the other thing that we need to do, we need to define keywords clusters to guide search strategy, right? So each concept now is going to be becoming a pillar for your search. Right. These steps now will ensure your search is methodological and replicable, not random. We don't want to do random searches, right? We need them to be directed, right? So we need to think through a prompt, right? I'm assuming that you know how to do a prompt already because we did prompts last week. So you probably know how to develop a prompt, right? So what we want to do is that we want to expand the concept vocabulary and identify alternative technology. So what prompt are we going to use here? We're going to use the prompt that says, the prompt that we can think of is, we want to use the prompt that says, our prompt here would say, generate keywords and synonyms for a literature search on artificial intelligence, journalism, education in South Africa, right? That's what we need to generate, or we can just simply refer to this research question, right? So let's label this as research question, right? Let's label it to give it some context so that we just not throwing things, right? We can choose here to say refer to the research question, right? We can just say refer to the research question. So this is our prompt that we have. We say generate keywords and synonyms for a literature search on artificial intelligence and education and in journalism education. So what we're simply doing here is that AI is supporting us to brainstorm, right? It suggests synonyms and abbreviations and related terms, right? At this stage, whatever comes out from here, right, it's not the final output. It's not final ideas. These are just your ideas that are linking out there, they are lingering out there, they are not the final outcomes. So it says to me here, the core conceptual components derived from the research question are as follows. So the first concept is artificial intelligence, journalism education, South African context, curriculum design, challenges and opportunities, right? These are the clusters. So each cluster is expanded below with relevant synonyms and related terms for comprehensive database search, right? So I have keywords and synonyms here. Artificial intelligence dimension, the primary keyword here is artificial intelligence or AI. Related terms are here: machine learning, deep learning, neural language processing, generative AI, automation, algorithm systems. So these terminologies here, or these synonyms, right, they might be used by different scholars, right, in different contexts, right? So like I said, if you limit your search to artificial intelligence and AI, you lose out on literature that is any one of these, right? And your literature will be limited and have a bias on artificial intelligence and AI. Therefore, your literature won't be rigorous, right? So what do you need to do? You need to go to related terms, right? Search for related terms and say, oh, okay, I also need machine learning, right? I also need deep learning. I also need natural language processing, generative AI, algorithm systems. All these terms in journalism literature, they are there, right? But if we pay a blind side on them, we miss out on literature that is focused on this, right? Then we go to the second cluster, which is journalism education, right? Then this is what we have. The primary words are journalism education and journalism training, right? These are the key words. But related terminologies are these, right? So what it simply shows that if you limit your search to these keywords only, right, you miss out on literature that doesn't have these keywords but have used these ones, right? So it's very important to take note of these, right, and not pay a byline of them, because some scholars don't use similar terminology. They opt to use journalism curriculum instead of journalism training, right? So this applies to any field of study. Then context, the primary word is South Africa, right? But now other key terms are South African universities, South African higher education, African journalism education, Sub-Sahara, Global South, post-apartheid higher education, Southern Africa, right? For strict focus, South Africa should remain mandatory in your key stress string, right? So these ones, these terms here, they will support the key term South Africa, but some scholars chose Global South. Some chose post-apartheid higher education instead of using the term South Africa. Then curriculum design, and it goes on and it goes on and it goes on and it goes on and it goes on, right? So these ones here, now it gets to your Boolean operators, the search strings, right? It went ahead of us, right? So we're saying here, the next stage would be we need to evaluate, right? These keywords, yeah, like I said, human judgment is very important, right? Human judgment is very important. You need to always evaluate to say, are these curriculum reform, is it really relevant, right, to my study? Curriculum transformation, right? Education innovation, I don't think this is so you need to evaluate and say, you know, I'm discarding all these. I'm only going with the key terms or the key words. And that's what only I'm going to follow through on. Right? It's very important, right? After evaluation, so apply disciplinary judgment. So you need to know, you should know the terminology that is working in your discipline, right? You apply disciplinary judgment to improve relevance and precision, right? Refine, now you need to refine that list, right? Of generated words to focus on media and communication, right? So if we say, you've given me a lot of information, right? I want you to refine this, right? I want to refine all the AI generated keywords, right, to focus on media and communication, right? Why are we doing this? We want to refine this, right? We're saying refine it, right? So that we get rid of all the things that are outside of our discipline. So we're saying, instead of broad computational terms, the following focus on how AI is framed within media and communication scholarship are below, right? Now, these are the terms that apply to my discipline. We have removed all other terms that are coming, or the search words that are coming from other schools or disciplines that more or less might dissuade our search. Right, so we have removed all those things. So we have improved our search, right? So in this particular case, what we're seeing is that AI does not understand your field, right? AI does not understand your field. We as researchers, we critically select these terms, right? We say, I don't want this, I don't want that, right? so that we remove vague or off-topic suggestions, right, that are not relevant to our field, right? But beyond that, we need to narrow our search, right, to our studies focus or scope, right? We need to contextualize these results. And in this particular case, we need to say, right, our study should focus on South Africa, right, or South Africa only, or we want to focus, right. So now we want to say, refine these and focus only on South Africa, right? Add geographical terms relevant to South Africa or the global South, right? I think we have already seen some of these, right? Right, so these are some of the terms that comes out. Right, so now you say these terms help capture national level scholarship and institutional case studies, core national identifiers, South Africa, Republic of South Africa, right? The South African universities have already seen some of these, right? But we have extended now we're seeing DHET, we see kinds of higher education, we see South African qualifications, SAQA, public universities in South Africa. Now we see University of Technologies in South Africa. Now it brings you to provincial identifiers. Do you want to look at Gauteng, KwaZulu-Natal, etc., etc.? Bring African regional terms, right? We're growing, and etc., etc. Right, so we are fine-tuning our search so that we'll come up with key balloon operators. So your balloon operators define relationship between terms, right? So here, this is where it's just an example of the balloon, the Boolean search strings that we have with geographical expansion, right? So we have artificial intelligence, or, right, I'm sure we've explained what O means and what O stands for in Boolean operators. Then we have algorithm journalism, or, right, automated journalism, right, or AI, right, then and, right. Now this is where search strings are making relationships, like we've said earlier on, that the purpose of Boolean operator search strings is to create relationships between searches, right? So we're identifying these keywords in that search. Now we have media education, we have journalism pedagogy, right? In South Africa, or South African universities, or post-higher education, right? South African or African comparative perspectives. So you will choose, you have all these Boolean operators, right? From here, the whole section 5 to D, right? It is Boolean operators that you use. We're going to take all of these Boolean operators and take them to Google Scholar so that we can search, right? And they will give us different results, different literature that we have, and we need to create a library for that literature, right? So where are we now? He's saying, this is a bit messy, right? This is still a bit messy, right? So our final prompt now would be, what do we need? What do we really need? Now, we need to create a transparent, right, reproducible and defensible search query, right? This search query is a Boolean operator that we can use or give to somebody, and when they search using that Boolean operator, they will get the same results, right? So even with AI assistance, we should not forget, we must understand every operator and term, right? This is important because it ensures that transparency and replicability in your methodology can be done by everybody else. Right, so that's very important. So our next step in this particular case, we want to have a search string, right? We need to say combine these keywords clusters into a Boolean search string for Google Scholar. Remember, we're saying we're doing Google Scholar. That's what we're doing for now. So we want one for Google Scholar that we'll take and go and use in Google Scholar. Then it says to me here, certainly, below is a careful structured Boolean string, stretch adapted specifically for Google Scholar syntax, which differs from Scopus Web of Science in that, number one, it supports quotation marks for exact phrases, right? Now I said I'll explain the reason why we use quotation marks. So if you're looking for a phrase, right, that is not a single word, right? If you don't use quotation marks to put that phrase in quotation marks, it will pick them up as different words, right? So the moment you put quotation marks, it will pick up literature that is artificial intelligence, not intelligence, but artificial intelligence. So these are our Boolean operators that we have, right? So we want to run them and test them on Google Scholar, right? So we have the master Google Scholar Boolean switch, which is number 1. This one is focused on AI, journalism, education, curriculum in South Africa. Then we have the optimized version for better Google Scholar performance, right? So this one is good, right? But it's too long for Google Scholar to use, right? It's a master one, right? So then this one is an optimized one because Google Scholar works better with slightly reduced complexity. This streamlined version may retrieve more relevant search, right? So this one here, the second one, will do a better job, right? So that's why I love ChatGPT. It gives you options. Which one do you want to go with? So we're saying I want to verify about artificial intelligence. I have it in my topic, and my research question is there. Then these are the synonyms, algorithm journalism. Yes, I'm familiar with this concept. Automated journalism, I'm familiar with this concept, and journalism education, which is the keyword, then media pedagogy, then journalism curriculum, and South Africa, or Global South or Sub-Sahara, right? This is the optimized one. And I think if we run this one, we'll get the best result. So what do we do now? Let's copy it and paste it, right? The optimized version, we want to copy it, then we go to Google Scholar. We want to run it in Google Scholar. So we're applying the search stream to retrieve literature and evaluate initial results. So we now test it, the stream on Google Scholar, right? And we want to see what comes out. But I want you to take notes, right? So I want to remove this end, right? But let me these the brackets, right? We don't need the brackets here when we using here. Take note of all and they are capital letters and the phrases are in quotation marks. The reason why I've already explained why we have quotation marks. Right, this is how to use Boolean operators, right, on Google Scholar. Right, we want to see the breadth and length of the literature that will come out there, and when that literature comes out, we need to screen it and verify it. Right, let's run it here. Right, so this is what comes out. The first person that comes out is me, fortunately. Right, this is my study here in a Q1 journal. All right, so this is what comes out. I'm looking at here, the term artificial intelligence is there, the term journalism education is there, South Africa is there. So this one here might be relevant to my study. But what do I do with it? I want to create a library, right, of this search. So I said this library that we create, we'll use it in our entire study. You don't need to go and search for more literature. The moment you create this library, you don't need to go back again. So if you click save, right, if you click save on this star here, there's a pop-in that comes out. This is a library list, right, label as. So we need to create a new library. Then you say create. Then I'm going to term it journalism education. Education in South Africa. Journalism education in South Africa. Then I'm done. I've created a library. So anything that I'm going to click here and save, it's going to be dropped in journalism education in South Africa. I'm creating a library, right? But I'm checking here, journalism education is there, South Africa is there, context, journalism education is there. So I like this one. I'm going to copy this one, right? I'm going to save this one. Right, I look here, digital AI algorithm. So this is where human verification and judgment comes into play, right? I look at it, they say artificial intelligence is there. One of my keywords is there. I save it, right? I'm saving it in journalism, that library, right? I'm saving this one is there as well. So I'm just quickly gonna save everything, about 10 of them, then I'll show you what happens, right? After we've saved, right? We've done this process before, but for the purposes of completing the demonstration, we need to repeat it again. Artificial intelligence, education is there, but we're not so sure about the context, but let's just keep it there, right? Artificial intelligence, journalism, education in South Africa is there. We're saving it again. We're creating a library, right? We're creating a library. This library here that we're going to create, right? We're going to use it for the rest of our study. Here, Google Scholar, you have a choice, right? You want studies from 2021 or 2026, right? You have a choice. You sort by relevance or sort by date. So if I click 2021 to 2026 here, I will limit my search, right, to studies only that are in the past 5 years. And this is the best way to go about it, because if you do it, it will limit studies that are outdated. You will not have a problem with your supervisor saying you have outdated literature, right? So already you see the ones already that came on top, they were sorted by relevance, right? They are here. Already I've saved them, right? Then we save this one here, journalism education in South Africa. We save this one. Right, we save this one as well. So you can save as many as you want because they meet the criteria, right? They meet the criteria. And when you are doing a scoping or systematic review, you need to document this process. This process must be written down. So what do we do then? How do we find what we have saved the work, this literature? You go to my library, right? The moment you go to my library, here is my library list on my file left, right? I have a library list. If I click on journalism education, right, these are all the studies that I've saved. I've saved all these studies, right? If I click here on top, if I click export, right, this is beautiful. There is bib text. You choose where you want to export your study, your citations, right? I can click EndNote. I can send it to EndNote if you're familiar with using EndNote. I can click reference man, right? You can send it there. Normally what I do, I click SCV, right? This is like a CSV file, right? And it asks me a question. Do you want to export articles only on this page, or do you want to export all articles within this label? I normally say export all articles within this label, right? In the moment I click export here, all articles within this table, I click export, I download, right? In my downloads, right? I download the list of all these articles. So already I have a library. I have all the studies that I have, right? And all these studies, they meet the criteria and I've searched them using the Boolean operators that we have created. So we can repeat this process of running the Boolean operators, right? But you need to, one thing that you need to do when you're using Boolean operators, there's this aspect of what we call the level of saturation, right? When you run them again and again, right? You reach a level of saturation, right? For example, this is our page 1, and these are the studies that we have, right? So if you go to page 2, right, of our you see there's still new studies that are not repeated, right? But the moment you see similar names, right, and similar studies coming out and showing up again, right, on your search page, right, just know that you have reached saturation. You have managed to get the wide and breadth of all literature that existed, so you might not need to continue. Right. If you see similar names that are coming on, for example, POF is already coming again. Is this the similar study? We need to verify that. Right. But the moment you see similar names and similar studies coming back again, just know that you have reached saturation. You might not need to continue with your search operation. We might not need to run the same search again. So you can all save these studies here. into your library, right? And you always use this library for your study as you go and you progress and stuff. So we're saying look for repeated authors, recurring themes, and irrelevant results. You need to make sure that they are all really relevant results are not picked up. Too many off topics. Here's the indicator. You need to make sure that there's not too many off topic studies, right? You can fine tune or improve the search string, right? For example, if you feel that the search string is not producing what you need to do, you can come back to your ChatGPT and say to ChatGPT, suggest a way to narrow this search without losing literature, right? That we want to see what will come out there, right? Then it has come out again, right? Now the words are limited, right? But this one here would narrow the search. It won't include a lot of things, right? So you have a conversation with ChatGPT. I know you are familiar with that, right? But what I want you to do, right? That the ethical aspect of it, where over-reliance and under-reliance with and reliance with ChatGPT and AI within the academic space to maintain integrity. The last thing that you want, that I request you to do, always one thing that you should always do is to document the search strategy, right? Ensure that you know and you can explain this whole process, right? And to explain this whole process is not a difficult concept to do because this platform has a good memory, right? So for the purposes of declaring what you do or what you did, right, in your study, in your PhD thesis, you can come back to ChatGPT and say, write a detailed declaration of how ChatGPT was used in the process of searching for literature. In this study, using the combination of ChatGPT and Google Scholar, right? Because the platform has a memory, it remembers everything that we did, right? So we don't need to scratch our heads, right? Right. Right at a standard required by academic institutions. Right. If you want, you can actually upload the university policy. Right. We can actually upload the university policy. In this particular case, let's see if we have any policy that we have. If we can identify the UKZN policy or any policy that we have, right? So that our declaration is in line with what is expected with the policy, right? And the reason why we're doing this is that nobody should question our work. UKZN AI policy. UKZN AI policy, there is the guidelines, right? Let's download the guidelines, right? In our downloads, then we upload it, right? Then if we upload the guideline, we're just going to say the declaration must be in line with the university policy attached. Right, then let's run it and see what comes out. I love it. It actually makes reference to the policy itself, and in some cases, it actually tells you the section where you what you've done is inconsistent with the section, like, yeah, this is what I'm talking about. So if you look here, now this will form part of your declaration of how you used AI in your literature search, right? So what I do, what I require my students to do, I don't ask them, I don't penalize them or ask them, why did you use AI? Why did you not use AI? What I do is that for each and every chapter, I know you used AI. I want you to provide me a declaration of what you did and the steps you did to use AI, right? So it says here, declaration on the use of generative AI intelligence in literature search process, right? It says the study made limited and responsible use of artificial intelligence, specifically ChatGPT in combination with Google Scholar. During the preliminary stage of the literature review, the process used generative AI was strictly confined to supporting activities, right, in accordance with the UKZN principles, right? The use of generative in this study adhered to the principles of ethical responsibility, rigor, and transparency. ChatGPT was utilized to assist in generating and filing Boolean search strings, identifying relevant keywords. So it actually documents. So it says here, in compliance with paragraph 6.2.2 of the AI guidelines, all ideas, arguments, and empirical findings incorporated in this study were traced and cited from the original scholarly work. Generative AI was not cited as a source and was not treated as an authority, right? Consistent with paragraph 6.1. So this is how to go about it. This will become your declaration, and this will become how you meet the standards of the university in terms of not exposing yourself to non-disclosure and the transparency therein. So this one will form part of your addendum in your study, right? So this will be addendum for the use of literature of AI in my literature review, right? Then you attach this. Then below you have chapter 1, you have chapter 2, you have chapter 3, how it was used, right? So that if any traces of AI is picked in your study, right, you've already declared that I used it. So nobody will come to you and penalize you and say, there's overuse of AI in this work, right? You can't ask me if there's overuse of AI in this work, but because I've already told you that there's use of AI in this work. And that's what the policy requires you to do. And that's what we refer to as ethical use of AI. Ladies and gentlemen, colleagues and friends, what we've done in this presentation is we've moved away from going to ChatGPT and just say, give me Boolean operators or keywords, to actually develop iteratively keywords and Boolean operators that are verifiable, justifiable, defendable, and can be replicated by any researcher at any given time and produce the same outcome. And also, we have addressed that by giving you how to declare the use of AI after you've generated your literature review or search strings using ChatGPT and Google Scholar. Ladies and gentlemen, this is what we regard ethical use of AI in developing your literature review. Thank you so much for taking time to attend this one, and I hope you've learned, right? And as academics, I think and I hope that we move away from using an over-reliance on ChatGPT to actually engage with the platform, because it has a lot of potential. You actually learn, right? And this debunks the argument that ChatGPT or generative AI makes people lazy. That's a fallacy, a slippery slope fallacy, because if you engage with what came out from here, reading every word by word, right, you would actually end up a genius in terms of developing Boolean operators and keywords and bringing out the best out of this platform. So ladies and gentlemen, we'll hear from you, your feedback, your comments, and what you think, and where do you think we must improve in our presentation. Thank you so much. Dr. Moringa here from Durban, Afri-Leader in AI. Right, we're opening the platform for the next 10 to 15 minutes to questions, comments, subtraction, additions, and divisions. Thank you so much. Right, the first one is coming from ZET. I'm not sure it's ZET or ZETE. You can go ahead. Thanks very much, Doc. Insightful as always, and you keep us awake up until the end. You
Thank
cannot
you.
sleep. You don't want even to quickly get out when you are in process. It's always a challenge. Doc, I want to check. Assuming that not all institutions they do have AI policy. If my institution does not have an AI policy, is there any overarching policy that I can use in terms of my declarations that I cannot be penalized by the institution? Once again, thanks very much, Doc.
Yes. Thank you. That's a very pertinent question. I know most universities do not have policies, except for a few. I mean, recently, Northwest had the first one to come up with the actual comprehensive policy. Others are frameworks, right? They're still under development, right? But what you can rely on is best practices, right, across the board. The first thing will be you cite best practices or benchmark with other universities, that this is what is being happening in other universities, drawing on other universities. But South Africa as a country, it has a national AI framework, right? We have a national AI framework, South Africa as a whole. That should be your basis for using AI, because the policy itself says that AI should be used, right? And it should be used in academia and all sectors of society. And when it is used, transparency, responsibility, and accountability must be taken. So what you simply need to do is to prove that you are transparent, you are declaring, and you verified, and you didn't replace human judgment, and you anchor your declaration on the South African policy, national AI policy framework. So yes, you can, in as much as this university doesn't have an AI policy, I mean, I think the national policy supersedes, right? Because it is the basis upon which all university policies are being drawn on, right? If any university policy goes against the national policy, then that policy needs to be reviewed, right? That policy needs to be reviewed. So yes, you have a policy, which is the national policy that you can use, and you can defend it because it's the national policy. Right, thank you so much for that one. I hope I've answered that one. Let's move on to Letitia. Letitia, yes.
Okay, thank you for giving me the platform. Thank you for a beautiful presentation. I had to take my phone with me everywhere so that I don't miss anything. I have a question.
Yes.
What I usually find overwhelming is the literature search, obviously, and I struggle to know when I'm really done with the literature. So is there a way to know that, how do you call it, my library is complete? Like once I've created my library, I don't have to go back looking for other literature. How do I know that I'm really done with searching with literature, that I can just start writing and go back to the same literature if I need to know more? So yeah, I just want to, like, when do I know that now I'm done, I can stop searching for looking at literature? Because yeah, otherwise I feel overwhelmed. I feel like there's never an end when it comes to searching for literature.
Right. So the search for literature, that was the purpose of our presentation today. So you can run these Boolean operators on different platforms, right? You can use these Boolean operators on your Scopus. You can use them on PubMed. You can use them on ProQuest. You can use them on Google Scholar, right? So what you need to play around with. I mean, we'll do Scopus in one of the weeks to come, right? We'll do how to run those Boolean operators on Scopus, right? The limitation with Google Scholar, like I've said, is that Google Scholar doesn't have some other functions, like limiting according to subject, limiting according to geographic context, limiting according to ABC, a lot of things, right? And that are found in other database like your Scopus. And so, of course, yes, searching on Google Scholar will become overwhelming because there's an unending, right? But the only thing that you can do is to use the available search to say geographical context, the keywords. I want you reduce the amount of keywords so that you can have a focused search, right? Then you reduce the year range, right? And I'll tell you that if you keep going on clicking page 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, you would see that Google Scholar will start to repeat some other studies. The moment you see a repetition of 1 or 2 studies or scholars, right, just know that you've reached saturation. Right. And I know if you do qualitative studies, saturation is a point at which there's no new data coming in, right? Everything is a repetition of what has been found or what has been said. So that is the indication that you must stop, right? But now the downside is that studies are being published every day. So you might choose to stop today, but next week there's more 100 papers have been published again within your field. So Google Scholar has that option for you to say, update me when studies within these keywords are published. Right. So every time when there is a study that is published that is related to your study or topic, it pops out on your Google Scholar. Right. It gives you a notification that according to your search or your research, it says 10 papers have been published in your field. That's what Google Scholar says. So every week you have 10 more papers coming in and you review them, you add them to your library. You review them, you add them to your library. What it does is that it enhances and boosts your library. By the time you finish your PhD, you don't have outdated sources, right? You actually have more and more updated sources. That's the best way to deal with it on Google Scholar. Have that notification that updates your library to say, 10 more papers are published. Then you look at the papers. Do I really need to add this to my library? No, I don't need. Okay, 1 or 2. Okay, when it's 1 or 2. So I always tell students that the literature review is a living document, right? You write a literature review for a PhD in 2026 and you submit your PhD in 2030, right? Some people get to that point. So what needs to be happening is that your literature review should be updated almost every month. Right? Your literature review should be changing almost every month. If you are going to submit your thesis in the next 2 years or 3 years, that literature review should be a living document. You mustn't write the literature review today and say, oh, I'm done with my literature review for my PhD. All right, I'm setting it aside. So you need to constantly update that literature review because studies are coming in every day. Studies are coming in every day. New knowledge is coming in every day. So that by the time you are compiling your dissertation or your thesis, you don't have redundant sources and the examiner will say to you, dude, you need to go and redo the literature review. So the literature review in this day and age, in the age of AI, the literature review should be a living document. It should be a document that is updated almost every week. What more insights are coming? Cite new scholars. What more insights are coming? By the end of 2026, right, your literature review that you're starting to write now, it should have scholars on studies or studies that were published in November or December 2026. If those studies are not there, right, when you submit by the end of 2028, 2030, you're going to have a problem because you have a literature review that is dead, not so dead, but almost dead because most of the studies in there are outdated, right? I hope I've answered all the questions, right? Then we have, I'm checking here, we have any other hands? Any other hands? Any other comments before we, I'm checking the chat. Right, I'm not receiving chats. I am not receiving chats. Oh, we have Elizabeth. Elizabeth, colleagues, if you can tell us where you are joining from, I think that will also be nice so that we know where you're coming from and what you're studying, right? And what your study is focused on, so that we also make this platform a platform for creating collaborations, right? So we'll start with Elizabeth.
Hi, Doc. I just wanted to know, in terms of the reviews, earlier you said that narrative reviews is commonly used among master students. So, how do you know, sir, when you should use, or for your topic specifically, systematic review or narrative or any other review? How do you make the decision, or how do you know? Thank you.
Right. So yes, thank you. That's a very pertinent question, right? So most disciplines now, I would tell you that the kind of literature review is informed mostly by the discipline within which you are working in, right? I would tell you that in humanities, narrative literature reviews are common, right? But in medical studies and in your psychology, that's where you find your medical, your sciences and stuff like that. That's where you find most of the systematic and scoping reviews are common in there. So I would say the discipline it informs more. The discipline where you're studying, where you are housed, informs more the kind of literature, but also your topic itself, the structure of your topic, what your topic wants to achieve. I mean, if your topic wants to map out what has been done in this particular field, right, you won't use a narrative. That will require you to do a scoping, right? That will require you to do, I mean, we'll talk about bibliometric reviews. That will require you to do a bibliometric analysis, right? So the topic, the objectives or what you want to achieve at the end of the day informs the narrative, informs the scoping, informs the systematic, right? So our studies in humanities, because we want to make reference of what has been done so that we identify gaps, right, in our studies. Therefore, we use narrative. We're narrating what has been done, and then we identify gaps, building on our theories and arguments. But when you are in sciences, you simply know, we want to scope what has been done, right? And we want to map out what are the key studies, what are the key concepts that have been studied, right? What are the key issues that have been studied within particular topic. That's where you come in with your scoping reviews and systematic reviews. So yes, two things informs: the discipline itself and the nature of your topic and objectives are very important, right? Then we have James Taiwo. James Taiwo, you can go ahead.
Good morning, Dr. Winger and everyone on the call. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you. Go ahead.
So my question is more of a question on how to. My name is Taiwo. I'm from Nigeria. I'm a recent graduate in the economics discipline. And my question is, I'm new here. I want to know where I can get the previous recording. Today I've learned a lot about AI. We are using AI to do literature review. So I want to know the previous, where I can get the previous link recording, including this one, for follow up and for study.
All right, thank you. So if you go to M&G Research YouTube or Facebook page, the previous, everything that we've done is relating to AI is there. I mean, there's quite a lot of videos that are there on YouTube and your Facebook, right? So I think to date, we've covered everything that you might need to know about AI in academic research. So those videos are there, right? But what we are doing this year, we are, if you are following, we are actually writing a PhD thesis every Saturday, right? We started with the ethics, we did the prompting, we did the topics, the relation, the topics, the aim, objectives. We have those, and today we do the searching of literature. So we have created a database. So in our next video, we will be writing the literature review. using AI tools, right? But of course, ethical AI tools. So we are actually writing our dissertation, our proposal, and a thesis on a weekly basis, right? That's what we're simply doing. So those videos are available for you to go and watch on YouTube, MNG Research YouTube, right? Let's hear. I saw there is Mpongose. Mpongose. Yes, Busiwe, you can go ahead.
Oh, yes. Thank you, Doc, for a very insightful presentation. I'm
Sure.
as well new in this meeting for today. What I would love to ask, or I just need an advice to you, Doc, for a researcher who has almost finished the study and has been using these AIs, not using the Boolean operators, this logic that you have been giving us. What advice can you give to that researcher? The study is ready to be submitted to turn it in. Yeah, that's the concern for now.
All right. So, I mean, if the study is almost complete, well, I doubt that there's much that can be changed now, other than if you feel that I want to boost my literature review, right? The only thing that you're gonna have to go and work on there is the literature review, or maybe your problem statement, right? To boost it with more recent and more focused literature, right? Because you'd find that one problem that we as examiners have encountered over the years is that when you are working on a study that less has been written about, students tend to rely on websites, reports to ground their problem statement, right? But when you're using Boolean operators, right, these are more strategic and search engines, search strategies that will allow you to pick the right stuff that will boost and enhance. We can cite them, right, so that you give credence and weight to your problem statement or your literature review. So I think for you, Busisiwe, I think there's not much that you can do if you're about to submit, unless you want to enhance your literature review. Go and do the Boolean operators and see if there are more recent studies, right, that are there that you can include in your literature review, or that, I mean, you know that you can't have new literature in your discussion section, right? But when you have included them in the literature section, you're going to have also now need to go and add more to your discussion to say, recently, I mean, this is where you introduce terms like recently. And I'll be very happy to examine your thesis when I'm seeing studies that was submitted, that was published last week, right? I'll be more impressed to see the thesis hit my desk today, and I'm scrolling it, and I'm seeing you have cited already papers that were submitted last week, that were published last week. That's a fresh cake from the oven, and that gives that's a plus. That's a plus. So that's one thing that you can do, but don't go and do much. I mean, I understand that you have put so much work already on your work.
Yes.
Yes. But yeah, all the best with your work, and hope that the examiners won't give examiner 2. Let's hope examiner 2 won't give you a hard time, right? It's always the difficult one.
Thank you very much, Doc. In terms of disclosure, do I have to go and do a disclosure as well as one of the appendices?
Right. So yes. So if you have ever used AI anyway, right? In your study, right? If you don't say, right, if I suspect AI as an examiner, right, and I raise that up in my report that I suspect that a lot of AI was used, and you didn't disclose, right, then it comes back. I'll say I'm not going to give you a mark until a disclosure has been made, right? I withhold the mark until a disclosure has been made. You don't need that to happen to you, right? Because you are being dishonest. You don't need that to happen to you. Nobody is failed a thesis or a dissertation because they used AI. No one is failed because of that, right? But you can be failed for failure to disclose, for academic dishonesty. So if you've ever used AI at any stage or any part of your literature, of your work, that disclosure needs to be attached, right? Because your failure comes through the non-disclosure, not the disclosure, depending on the university policy.
Thank you, Doc.
Yes, right. Let's hear Sina Molokisi. Sina.
Good afternoon, Doc, and everyone. Doc, I just wanted to find out, how do I declare that I've used AI writing language tool like Writeful or Grammarly?
Right. So that's an interesting one. I will answer the question, but I would advise also for you to go and watch the video that we did on AI ethics. Right. So I will emphasize this again. Right. You cannot cite AI in your work. Right. Like you're citing an author. You can't do that. AI cannot be cited in your work as an author. Right. Number two, disclosure is acknowledging that this has been used, right? So I would say in this study, right, all ideas and work and everything that is here is the work of the student. It's my own work. It belongs to me. However, the work was enhanced using Grammarly version ABCD, developed in the United States of America, right, to enhance and improve grammar and language editing. It was used extensively or moderately, or you need to include the extent of use, extensive, moderately, or whatsoever. Why are these terminology important in your disclosure? Is because if you say moderately and it turned out that you used it extensively, that will give you problems. It's very important for the choice of terminology that you use. If you've used ChatGPT extensively, right, put it out there that I've used it extensively, because if we pick that up, that it was extensively used, and whereas your declaration said you only used it in creating structure, and we pick up that all your sentences are all ChatGPT, then there is a dishonesty there, and we can fail you as examiners. Right. So what you need to do, things that you need to bear in mind, that non-disclosure will put you in trouble, right? And not disclosing the extent when you've disclosed can also put you in trouble, right? So that's why we say transparency, accountability, disclosure, and human judgment. Those are the things that we are evaluating to say, have all these been upheld in your work? Because they amount to academic integrity. If you cannot prove that you upheld all this, your work is questionable. And I don't want to believe that there's somebody who is not using ChatGPT in this day and age. And that's one thing I always, when I'm examining at this, the first thing that I go to, I'm looking for the disclosure. Because I know that generative AI has been used somewhere. I know that somebody has used Grammarly. And if Grammarly is not declared, I know that somebody is using editing too. If somebody is not declared, that's the first thing that I'm going to flag. To say, can the student please disclose the AI tools that they've used? Because it is common knowledge that you can't sit on your computer without editing your work with some tool. You can't use your computer. It's very difficult. You can't search your literature from the library and go and read books. You need to disclose all those things that you've used. So I'm saying to you that non-disclosure will land you into trouble. You might want to sound fancy and not want to be involved with AI. But if you meet an examiner like me, the first thing I'm saying, where is your disclosure? Because I know you didn't go to the library to read hard textbooks. How did you search your literature? How did you synthesize your literature? How did you screen your literature? Disclose all those things. Unless you want to write that I went to the library and spent the whole night there, then that's fine. But non-disclosure for me is a punishable offense. I'll penalize you. I'll fail you for non-disclosure. I don't hesitate. Right. So that's what's up. That's what needs to be done. I'm not sure if we still have any other questions, comments that are coming in. Do we have anything in the chat? I can't access the chat at the moment. I can't access conversations that are happening in the chat. I'm not sure what is happening. Anything else, colleagues, before we call it a day? Anything else?
Doctor, good
Yes.
afternoon. This
Yes.
is Aisha Watsemba from Uganda.
Thank you, Aisha. Thank you for joining us.
Okay. So my question is, okay, maybe I need clarification.
Yes.
So does it mean I'm going to go for each objective and follow through the same procedure and then keep building libraries so that I can come up with a particular section in my literature review?
Yes. So you know, for a PhD level, right? This is what you need to do. Exactly what you said. But remember, we said your literature review should have headings, and the headings are drawing on research questions, right? So for each and every research question, it must have its own literature that has been searched relating to what you are asking for, right? And this is where you're going to have overlaps and reach saturation on your search on Google Scholar, because some studies are going to show up again and you don't pick up those studies, right? So you can have 4 libraries. The first library is for research question 1, second library, research question 2, third library, research question 4. And the reason why these libraries are important is because they're going to inform the literature review per every section. Right. And when you are discussing your findings, you're not going to struggle to look for literature to discuss because you have the library already. So yes, you can do this for each and every question because questions ask different things.
Okay, thank you.
Right. But because most of us have no time, right? The best bet would be to use the topic itself or the research title.